and happy Tuesday. Today I'm going to be going over the May 26th portion of the distance learning packet where we're going to have some reading. You're going to read for 15 minutes. You can use a book of your own, the foldable book from the back, or again, one of those really awesome online resources you have found. We're going to be reading a procedural text, Let's Make Peanut Butter. For writing, you're going to have a writing prompt where you're going to write out the steps to make peanut butter in your own words and in the correct order. And then for math, we're going to have a math task and then end with math procedural practice. So let's go ahead and get started. After you've already read for 15 minutes, you're going to move to the Let's Make Peanut Butter procedural text where you're going to read the text together. So when it says together, you're going to read it with a parent or a sibling. And then you're going to make a list of the steps involved in making peanut butter, from planting peanut seeds to stocking store. So this is very similar to last week where we were identifying the steps in making cardboard. Okay, so this is what you're going to read. Let's make peanut butter. There you can tell it's a procedural text. It's a short read, it's 4 paragraphs. So when you're done reading this, then you're going to discuss with your parents and you're going to write, or your parents or your siblings, sorry, and you're going to write out a list of the steps to make peanut butter. And then after you are done with that, that's actually going to be your writing prompt, is writing the steps to make peanut butter in your own words and in order. So again, I gave you an outline here where if you fill this in, it's going to give you a really good paragraph. And a paragraph consists of usually 4 to 5 sentences. So this is going to be your introduction, where you're going to put, there are many steps to make peanut butter, and then fill in, maybe there are many steps to make peanut butter. This is how you make it. There are many steps to make peanut butter. Let's talk about the different steps. And then you're going to actually list the steps. I gave you some transitional phrases here, so you're going to put first. That would be the first step. You can put another step or another reason. Actually, another reason doesn't really work, so let's go ahead and fix that right now. So another step, and then additionally would be that final step. And again, those are your transitional phrases. You just fill that in. And then our conclusion I've given to you, it's just kind of restating your topic sentence using different words, where you're going to say these are the steps you need to take to make peanut butter. So that, again, follow that outline, fill it in, write it on that lined paper, and you're going to have a really good paragraph about the steps to make peanut butter. And we are going to move on to math now, where we're going to start with our math task, and we have a word problem. Dakota had 200 plastic bugs. He lost some bugs. He has 155 bugs left. How many bugs did he lose? Well, as you can see, we have 200. He started with 200, and he has 155 left. So in order to find out how many bugs he lost, we're going to need to subtract how many he has left from the total amount he had initially. Okay? So I have it lined up here, the 200 on top, 155 on bottom. I've lined it up by place value. The ones are lined up with the ones, the tens lined up with the tens, and the hundreds lined up with the hundreds. So if we follow those 3 steps for multi-digit subtraction, we're going to always start with the ones column, where here we have a 0, and if you have none, a 0 is none. If you have none of something, can you give 5 away? No, you can't. So the general rule is you go next door and borrow from next door. But in this instant, next door is also a 0. So now we're going to need to borrow twice. So we're going to have to borrow from the 2. The 2 is going to become, the 2 is going to become a 1. And then this 0 over here is going to become a 10. Stretch that out just a little bit. All right. So now the 0 is gone, and the 0 becomes a 10. And now we need to borrow again. So I'm going to actually need one more of those. So now this 0, this 10 is going to become a 9. So I'm going to make this a 9 because we're borrowing, we're borrowing 1. So now that 10 is going to become a 9, and then this 0 is going to become a 10. because we borrowed, and how I got that is we borrowed 110 from the 10 here, which makes that a 9, and then now this is a 10. Now we're going to subtract. Now we're able to subtract our ones column. So we have 10. If we have 10 of something and we take away 5, we are left with 5. And now step 2, we're going to move on to the tens column. If we have 9 of something and we take 5 away, we are left with 4. And if you have 1 of something and you take 1 away, you are left with 0. We don't need to bring 0 down because it doesn't have a value. So we know that Dakota lost 45 bugs. That is our difference. When you're subtracting for the difference. The difference is 45. And what we were looking for is how many bugs Dakota lost. He lost 45 bugs. Okay, and now let's move on to a little bit more of our procedural practice where we're going to continue to focus on multi-digit subtraction with regrouping. And remember, when we're regrouping with subtraction, you're borrowing from your neighbor. Okay, so number 1, we have 431 and we are going to subtract 345. So remember, we're looking for the difference. Whenever you see that subtraction symbol, we're looking for the difference. If we start with step 1, we need to start with the ones column. Here we have 1 minus 5. If you have 1 of something, you cannot take 5 away, so we need to already borrow, where our 3 is going to become a 2. And then our 1 is going to become an 11. Now we have 11, which is greater than 5, so we know we can subtract that. So we're going to put 5 in our head, and we're going to count up on our fingers to 11. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and we are left with 6. Now that we have completed step 1, we can go ahead and move on to step 2, where we have 2 of something and we need to take 4 away. Again, 2 is less than 4, so we need to borrow or regroup to make that happen. So here, this 4 is going to become a 3, and now this 2 is going to become a 12. And now because 12 is greater than 4, we are able to subtract. If we have 12 of something and we take 4 away, so put 4 in your head and count on your fingers up to 12, putting 4 in our head, and now starting with 5. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, stop. You should have 8. And then our third and final step, we are moving on to number 1, where if you have 3 of something and you take 3 away, you are left with nothing. We don't even need to put a 0 there because a 0 has no value. So we know the difference of 431 and 345 is 86. So let's go ahead and continue on with practice. We're going to go over number 2, where we have 762 and minus 88. So again, we're looking for that difference. As you can see here, this looks a little bit different because we do not have a number in the hundreds column. That's fine. We're still just lining up these numbers based on place value, where we put the 10 with the 10 and the 1 with the 1. All right, let's go ahead and practice. If we have, starting with the ones column, if we have 2 of something, we cannot take 8 away. So we know we are automatically going to have to borrow from our neighbor. This 6 is going to become a 5. And this 2 then is going to become a 12. If you do 12 minus 8, if you have 12 of something and you take 8 away, you are left with 4. We've completed step 1. Let's go ahead and move next door to the tens column and complete step 2. Here we have 5 minus 8. 5 is less than 8, so we know we are going to have to borrow from that 7. That 7 in the hundreds column is going to become a 6. And now our 5 here is going to become a 15. 15 is greater than 8, so we know we can continue with subtracting. If you put 8 in your head and count on your fingers up to 15, that is going to give you the difference. So 8 in your head, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, stop, and you should have 7 fingers held up because 15 minus 8 is 7. And now we can move on to that third and final step, where here, if usually you had a number in the hundreds column, you would subtract the top from the bottom, but because there's nothing there, 6 minus nothing is still 6, so you're just going to bring that 6 right on down to the party, and we know that 762 minus 88 is 674. Let's practice with number 3, where we're going to continue to do the same thing. We're going to follow the same 3 steps. Step 1, starting with the ones column, 3 minus 4. 3 is less than 4, so we know we are going to need to borrow from our tens, where our 5 is going to become a 4, and that means that our 3 is going to become a 13. 13 minus 4 is 9. And that means we can move on to step 2, where we have 4 minus 6. 4 is less than 6, so we know we are going to need to borrow from the hundreds column. So that 9, remember, you're borrowing from the number on top, not the number on bottom. That 9 is going to become an 8, and then that means that 4 is going to be a 14. So we have 14 minus 6. If you put 6 in your head and count up to 14 on your fingers, that will give us a difference. So 6 in your head, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Stop. We are left with 8. And we are finally able to move on to the third and final step in problem number 3. Where we are going to subtract the hundreds column. We have 8 minus 7. We know we can make that happen because 8 is greater than 7. If you have 8 of something and you take 7 away, you are left with 1. So the difference of 953 minus 764 is 189. And then we are going to move on with some more procedural practice, where I'm going to go over 4 and 5 with you, and I'm going to want you to try 6 through 9 on your own, okay? All right, I know these look a little bit different, but they are still lined up based on the place value. They just do not have the lines to keep them organized, but that's okay because we're following the same steps. Starting with, we're going to subtract 702 minus 211. If you have 2 and you take away 1, 2 is greater than 1, so we can make that happen. 2 minus 1 is 1. And that means we can go ahead and move on to step 2, where we're going to subtract the tens column. 0 minus 1. 0 is less than 1, so we are going to need to borrow from that 7. That 7 is going to become a 6, and that 0 is going to become a 10. Let me drag that over. A little bit more. Okay, so subtracting the tens column, 10 minus 1. We know if you have 10 of something and you take 1 away, it is 9. That is finishing step 2. So we can move on to our third and final step, which is subtracting the hundreds column. We have 6. 6 take away 2 is 4. We don't have one. Give me just a minute. Add a little box there. And we know our difference is 491. So let's go ahead and try one more together, and then you can try some on your own. We're going to try to find the difference for number 5, where we have 884, and we're subtracting 197. So again, following those same 3 steps, where we're going to start with the ones column. We have 4 minus 7. 4 is less than 7, so we're going to need to borrow from that 8. That 8 is going to become a 7, and our 4 is going to become a 14. Over. Okay, now we can subtract. 14 minus 7 is 7. And that is the first step. Now we need to move on to, that one is, sorry about that. That one is 7. And now we need to move on to the second step, where we are going to be subtracting the tens column. We have 7 of something. We want to take 9 away. We know we can't do that because 7 is less than 9. So we're going to borrow from that 8. That 8 is going to become a 7. And then this 7 is going to become a 17. Okay, so 17 minus 9. If you put 9 in your head and you count on your fingers all the way up to 17, that's going to let us know that difference. So 9 in your head, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Stop. You should have 8. And finally, moving on to that hundreds column, the third and final step, 7 minus 1. If you have 7 of something and you are taking 1 away, you are left with 6. So we know the difference of 884 minus 197 is 687. So go ahead and try the last 4 on your own. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out to me and I will walk you through those steps. The next 2 days of the packet, they kind of have some fun activities planned for you. So May 27th, which is going to be Wednesday, you get to complete a summer bucket list where you are going to draw and or write about what is in your summer bucket list. So in this bucket, you're going to either draw or write about places I want to go this summer. And in this bucket, you're going to draw or write about friends I want to see this summer. So maybe some of your friends from school. It could be family, maybe some cousins or aunts or uncles you want to see. In the third bucket, it's things I want to do. So you can either draw or write about things you want to do this summer. Maybe you want to go to the beach. Maybe you want to read. Maybe you want to clean your room. You're going to put that in this bucket. And then in the fourth and final bucket, it's things I want to learn this summer. So you can either draw or write about that. Maybe you want to learn how to ride a skateboard. Maybe you want to learn how to do multiplication. So go ahead and you can either draw or write that in these buckets. So that is the only thing you have for May 27th. And then for Thursday, which is actually the last day of school, they also have a fun activity where you're going to do a 5 senses scavenger hunt. And every time you find one of these, it's broken up into the 5 senses, which is sight, sound, touch, smell, and taste. And every time you find one of these, you are going to mark it off your list. So for instance, sight, if you find something white, you can check that off. For sound, if you find something that snaps, check that off your list. For smell, find a flower with a scent, check that off. For touch, find something soft, you can check that off your list. And finally, for taste, if you find something an animal would eat, you can check that off your list. And yay, we are done. So this is going to be our last video. I hope you all have a great summer. Stay safe, and we will see you when school starts. Goodbye.
Summertime, it's our vacation. What time is it?